Okay, this morning is all about celebrating of you all in your advocacy journey for people with disabilities. You've come this year, you have taken action in large and small ways, and we want to just acknowledge those actions. So here to talk about this past year is Tammy Jackson. Tammy is a legislative liaison and a public policy strategist for the Wisconsin Board for People with Developmental Disabilities. You might recognize her for her infamous Friday Fallout webinars that she does. So take it away, Tammy.
Good morning, conference goers. Are we ready for day 2? Yes, yes. Okay, we are trying something different this morning. Caitlin, my partner in crime, who is the true person who keeps the wheels on the bus and rolling forward, has given you some little QR codes at your table. And we're going to try and make this interactive today. So there will be points in this presentation where you will see a QR code, and that will be your sign to take your phone and scan in that code and type in your answers. So it's been quite a year, and we thought we would take a journey back in time and see what we can remember. January. Do you remember January? Me neither. It's a long time ago. Time is a flat circle. There were a lot of folks that started to think about in last December, actually, what this year might look like. And a lot of national advocates were already getting themselves worried about whether or not Congress might be considering big cuts to Medicaid and big changes at the federal level. So we spent January getting prepared and helping you kind of flex those muscles about how do you talk to lawmakers, who's in charge of what decisions, and what kind of things might you say? How do you tell your stories? And it turned out that we were right to do that, because by February, you folks were already starting to move. I've kind of put a summary month by month, just the highlights. Of course, there's a lot more that probably happened in February, and maybe some of you were doing things that weren't public policy work too. You know, there might have been birthdays and school and other things going on in your life. But February, we really started to see that some of what national advocates were worried about did seem to be part of the conversation. And the other thing I want you to do today, I've kind of skimmed down some of the articles and the people and the coverage that has happened over the last year. So if you see somebody in those pictures, or that you were part of some group, you know, do a little wave, do a little clap, or point at the person who's not willing to do either of those things, who's in the picture. That's also okay. We started having a lot of disability advocates meeting with their Congress people. You could see a picture here of 40 people in Representative Van Orden's district in their office. We started talking about some of the major issues that people with disabilities were worried about, including home and community-based long-term care, family care, and IRIS. And you guys started getting lots of coverage. You started thinking about what is the system, what is the things that we have right now. A lot of you said, you know, I'm making it work right now. I have, you know, pieces of support from various programs, and it's manageable right now. But if any one little thing changed, my life could look really different. And those stories started to be really well covered in the press. So we've got a number of other folks that from across the state who are having meetings, people who are doing interviews. and people who were sharing their stories on social media. I don't know if Nancy Kapinski is here today, but if she is, there's a great little link. So a lot of you started recording your own stories and posting them to social media. You started posting the realities of your lives on social media, and it made a tremendous amount of impact, not only on lawmakers who often don't know the realities of how people with disabilities kind of use these systems, but also people in your own social circles who um, might not be aware of all the things you do every day. So here's your first QR code and your first question. And I will give you a little time to start populating. Let's see how many dots can we get on this question? Uh, oh, this is really fun. Look at all these dots. It's like we're watching something grow. It's like a petri dish, only better. All right, pretty good dots. Oh my gosh, they're still coming. Pretty cool. I just want everybody in the room to look around, and you see all these tables here and all of these dots. Everybody here, not only the folks in the slides, has done some of that this year. So now we're going to move to March. Everybody remember March? That also seems like a long time ago. This is when we started to learn what Congress was really proposing when it came to Medicaid. We also started to see federal agencies deciding to make some pretty big changes and firing a number of workers. We started to see some new things being tried, either withholding money that had been promised to states or other strategies to kind of to change how money that Congress had promised to spend would be spent. And we avoided a government shutdown in March. Remember that? Because we're in a government shutdown now, but we almost had one in March too. And at that time, your advocacy really helps guarantee that a lot of the disability organizations that work for disability interests, including this one and Disability Rights Wisconsin and a lot of aging organizations, got funding for this year. And boy, did you keep yourselves working. Look at all of these articles that have appeared in Wisconsin's press. We have a US Senator who decided at this moment that healthcare was a big concern to her. Senator Baldwin has been having, I didn't put all of these on here, but she has been having many, many, many little local roundtables and local coverage. There were lots of people with disabilities who participated in those and got some really good coverage. And a lot of you started participating in town halls and really getting out your message about what does Medicaid do for people with disabilities and family caregivers. What are the things it offers that you can't get anywhere else? And many of you took the next step to be very clear with reporters. And there were some great personal stories that got published in a variety of local and statewide papers. All of these things were important because many of you not only did the work to get the articles, but you also then provided something for the rest of our community to share with each other, which I think helped the disability community say, see that article? Me too. That fits me too. So our next question, our next interaction, let's see how many dots. That's great. Oh, more dots. Pretty cool. Pretty cool. And I bet lots of you did more than one of those things. And maybe some of you have a dot in one of these columns that actually says, I called my legislators, but you did it 50 times, not just once. So I want to honor that this is not representative of all of the action our community has taken, but a really, really big group of you at these tables were part of that movement. Then we go to April. At this point, now we know. We know what the US House is proposing to cut for Medicaid. And I should be clear that the ideas that folks were worried about in January, that were talked about in February, your action made sure that the deepest cuts, the things that would have structurally changed Medicaid, were not part of what the House proposed. And that was far from certain. So the actions that all of you took between February and April made a huge difference. And I know, looking on the other side of $1 trillion in Medicaid cuts over the next 10 years, that may not feel like a big deal, but it was absolutely because of advocacy from people like you that this was not deeper. We also had activity in the state legislature. And many of you who had been thinking about Medicaid for a few months at the federal level showed up, not only at the hearing, but also at your legislators' offices in their in their districts, and called and emailed, because we kind of collectively saw that the state legislature's knowledge of Medicaid and what it takes to get into the program and stay in the program and what you have to do to qualify, a lot of state legislators thought that was pretty easy. And you guys all showed up and said, no, it's not, including a friend, this person who's testifying here, who brought a ream of paper to show that this is how much paper every year it takes for me to get through the forms. And that made a tremendous impression. Not only did that bill not advance, but you got many articles that came out of it that really were helpful in educating the wider public about, what our current system does, not only to verify everybody who's in the program should be there, that they are qualified and eligible to be there, but all of the steps and the checks and the controls to make sure that folks that are in the program are not committing fraud or waste or abuse. There started to be fewer town halls, but more people gathering in public, and lots of you tried some new strategies this month. You tried interactive strategies in crowds to help people understand how they or somebody they knew was touched by Medicaid that was really effective. You started having organized events that got coverage. And you started writing letters to the editor, and a lot of you got published in large and small papers across the state. We also had budget hearings, because in the middle of all of the things going on at the federal level, our state legislature is still trying to pass a budget. And I tell you what, you guys showed up at those state budget hearings, and the two biggest things that committee, who makes all the decisions about how state taxpayer dollars are spent, what they heard about was Medicaid and special education. And a lot of the folks in this room and beyond were the ones who took the opportunity to talk in public or email or contact their state legislators to really hit home, why are these things that receive some state dollars so critical to your daily lives? Oh gosh, I didn't even have to repeat the instructions. You guys are pros at this now. Look at all those dots coming up. The work that you guys did in April, for those of you who submitted testimony or testified or attended a hearing, you wouldn't know it then, but it paid off in July. Because one of the two things that our state legislature did is they made sure that they increased special ed and they made sure there was enough money in Medicaid to cover the cost of what they think the cost of Medicaid would be for the next 2 years. So all of this investment here, the time that you put in here is going to pay off. We haven't gotten to that part yet. All right, May. This still seems a really long time ago, doesn't it? May. So now we know what the US House not only has proposed in terms of cuts to Medicaid, but they've actually done it. And the bill that they've passed includes $1 trillion in almost $1 trillion in cuts to Medicaid, almost billion dollars in cuts to the food assistance program known as SNAP, and also a lot of changes to ACE, the Affordable Care Act marketplace, which is a big deal for a lot of family caregivers and people with disabilities. The Congressional Budget Office, which is kind of the independent analyst, keeps having to revise its estimates because this bill and the ideas are changing so fast that they're passing things before they really know how much money is being cut. And we also learned some of the president's ideas. The president, just like the governor, says, here's my ideas for how we should spend, annual appropriations. And there were a lot of ideas in that proposal that also looked like they would impact people with disabilities. So a lot of setting the stage in May for work to come later. And some of the old guard, I don't think Lynn's here, so I can say that. Some of the old guard started to talk about what were things like before the systems that we have in place now? What did it mean before we had IDEA and the Rehab Act and the Americans with Disabilities Act, and when most people were in institutions, and when Medicaid paid only for institutions and not for home and community-based services? And I think there was a different tone that people started to strike this month as they realized that now the proposal was real and it had passed one house of Congress. There were lots of folks who were starting to think about, what does my life look like now? Do I have people in my life that had a very different experience before these things were in place? And what could it look like if things change? And again, you guys kept up the pressure and you started your own kind of grassroots campaigns, little short videos, things that you were trying to help across the state. Other people share short little videos of your stories and making sure that folks shared those. Independent journalists started to get really interested in some of your issues and started to pay attention. And many of these people had been following your work for several months before they started to get engaged and actually write stories. So again, your investment of your time starts to pay off in spades as we keep moving on. May is when the House passed the reconciliation bill, and you can see how many organizations, this is a partial list, reacted and responded en masse when that happened. Maybe some of your local organizations did too. I run out of room on slides. All right, get your buttons ready. And this means not just the month of May, but if you attended a town hall or set up a meeting with your legislator or were part of a group that attended or went by for local district office hours and dropped materials off, this is for you. Thanks. So many dots. And by now, I hope you can see that you have a lot of people in this room. If you didn't do this thing, somebody else did it for you. And if you did something else, you paid it forward for them. Lots of you may have done many of the things that are on this list. Some of you may have done one thing at one time and taken a break and done something else. All of it is important. It's cumulative and it's additive. June. So by June, now that we know what the House has passed, it gave the State Department of Health Services a better sense of, okay, can we think about how this would actually impact Wisconsin? And they released their own estimate of what those ideas in the House bill would mean for Wisconsin's Medicaid and SNAP program. The Senate, the US Senate, has different ideas yet than what the House does. But national advocates also said those ideas were to make deeper cuts, not to undo some of what the House has already passed. We had more flesh on the bones of what the president's budget proposal might mean, and certainly some requests to Congress and some indications that the administration might want to have Congress say, well, we promised these folks some money, but we're going to undo that promise by passing a bill. You guys didn't let up. Lots of you got more and more personal and more real about what it means to have Medicaid in your life. Lots of you started trying even different tactics where you would maybe attend an event and have a kind of little 5, 6, 7 sentences of context before answering your question, which helped educate the audience. And we started talking about different angles because it isn't only the people who are in Medicaid who are affected by Medicaid cuts. It's also all of the other folks in families that are kind of the glue holding things together and that are filling the gaps in the current system when there's no one else, that start to get impacted too. So we started talking about the importance of Medicaid in many different ways. And this is a particular event that got some coverage that focused on family caregivers and what it might mean if there was less support for the people they were caring about. So here's our next set of dots. And if you sent in a letter to the editor and they didn't publish it, that still counts. Look at all these famous people. Famous people talking to reporters. Yep. Writing things down. And I hope by now you can see how successful all of those efforts were. I just picked out a few of the stories that were published. There were a lot more. So if you didn't see yourself for the article that you wrote, it's because either I didn't find it or I ran out of room. Okay? Pretty impressive. July. Big month. I'm starting to remember July. July doesn't feel as long ago, but it was a huge month. For those of you who are really following what was happening at the federal level, there was a 10-day period where the US Senate kept changing what was in the bill that was going to cut Medicaid and SNAP every 5 minutes, it felt like. We had that bill and the ideas evolve so fast over a period of 3 days that the people who are charged with analyzing what does the bill do couldn't keep up. And within a week, we had on July 4th, a bill that was passed and signed into law. And our state legislature got in under the wire and passed their state budget 12 hours before that bill was signed into law, which was a big deal for the state because it meant that the state legislature approved, here, we're going to fund what we're doing now in Medicaid. We're going to make a commitment and a promise to do the same thing for the next 2 years, despite what the federal government is doing. And then, not cut before we need to cut. That isn't what happened in other states. And for those of you who have kind of been following this nationally, I think now when you look back at July, you can see the wisdom of our state legislature acting very quickly before the passage of that federal bill, because we actually locked in and made ourselves a lot more stable, knowing that there were cuts coming. And as predictable, there was a lot of reaction about the content of that bill that has now become law. Lots of folks continued to raise very legitimate concerns. I'm going to be honest. This month, we started doing this in July. This is going to be an ongoing need until the thing is fully implemented, which might be 2 years from now. So your voices, which were so critical in making the $1 trillion in cuts less significant than they already are, your voices are also going to be extremely critical in helping educate new lawmakers, new people who are making decisions at the state level about what is important to people with disabilities and what it means if some of those services change. And it isn't only folks like yourselves. There are other professionals that represent very different interest groups. Maybe not the people who use Medicaid and family caregivers, but entities like hospitals that get paid Medicaid dollars for taking care of Medicaid patients. Lots of impacts that are beyond people with disabilities. We are in a very big tent of impacted people by these cuts. And a lot of folks are being pretty clear about their concerns. None of them are being as eloquent or as clear as you. And you are the folks that are the face of what Medicaid really means. Lots of bubbles. August, we start getting some more estimates about what the bill that was signed into law on July 4th will start meaning for the state. Specifically, the cuts to SNAP are going to be implemented first. Congress does pass a bill to take money that was promised back from some programs. And we start to learn how that bill that was signed July 4th is going to impact Wisconsin's Affordable Care Act marketplace plans. So we are in the kind of the front end. The Medicaid cuts are coming. And in the next year, there's going to be a lot of work that states have to do to figure out how to implement some of those cuts. But there are going to be things that happen first. specifically to SNAP and to the ACA marketplace. And some of you said, you know what? I'm going to ride to Madison in my wheelchair. I'm going to take some direct action. I'm going to elevate some of the issues that that are important to me. Carl Schultz, I don't know if he's here today, but he spent 3 weeks in his wheelchair traveling 90 miles down to the Capitol, really to elevate the importance of paid caregivers and how they're paid and what happens when we don't have enough of them, which is an issue that's very familiar to all of us. He got a ton of coverage for those 3 weeks in all sorts of local media and a great, nice press conference at the Capitol that state lawmakers attended. Folks with different kinds of disabilities started to talk about specifically what it would mean if things changed for them. And we have more and more coverage of people who are starting to realize something has happened and there's a period of uncertainty that we're going to experience together for the next year. But still, you guys kept acting. You started acting in different ways. You started attending events and town halls and rallies, maybe meetings with your own local group. You see how many bubbles each time? Were amazing. September. I think I remember this month. This isn't that long ago. Lots happened in September. The changes at federal agencies have continued from March through this time period. And now we are in a place where Congress has not approved the annual budgets that many aging and disability organizations relied on to continue delivering programming. So there starts to be conversation and worry that maybe Congress won't do all of the work it needs to do by the deadline, and that we will run out of money at the end of the federal fiscal year, which is September 30th. And if that happens, the federal government would shut down. We also start seeing other states who didn't do what Wisconsin did, who didn't pass their cost to continue for their Medicaid budgets, starting to make cuts to their programs in advance before they have to make cuts due to the reconciliation bill. Lots of national advocates were really worried about it. It's hard to be right, but that is in fact what's happening in at least a half a dozen states across the country, that they are looking to reduce their Medicaid budgets before they have to implement the changes that are required in the federal bill. We also had some comments about autism from the administration. Lots of you had thoughts about that and shared them pretty broadly with people on social media and amongst your colleagues. So here's a sampling of some of you who, dusted off yourselves and went, I'm going to talk to reporters about what I'm hearing people say about autistic people. And Survival Coalition, which is the largest coalition of disability and aging groups, actually held a press conference, kind of really focused on the collective set of changes that we were seeing not only Congress make, but the administration make, that really look like they are impacting the same groups of people from different angles at the same time. Let's get a hand for those visitors. Takes commitment to sit down face to face. We're almost home. We're in September. We're only in October. That means we're we're almost to where we are currently at the SD conference. So here we are in October. The federal government has been shut down for 4 weeks now. And that will start having bigger and bigger impacts on some of the programs that people with disabilities use. We do not have a federal budget. Again, a lot of the programs that people with disabilities and disability organizations and aging organizations run rely on annual money from the federal government. And we're starting to see the administration make additional changes in terms of firing or making changes at federal agencies, and also saying that they will continue to do even more changes if the shutdown continues. And I'm going to end with Cindy Bentley, because I think she always has the last word. Some of you may know her. She's the executive director of People First. The Survival Coalition press conference resulted in a big front page story from the Milwaukee Journal Sentinel. And I think it was really a well done article that represented kind of the collective thoughts that lots of people across the state are sharing as they kind of look at the changes that are happening to many programs that people with disabilities and older adults rely on. So I think that when it comes to the collective work that you guys have done over the last 10 months, I stopped with Cindy and then things just kept happening. So, you know, we stopped at what happened on October 10th, but it's now October 22nd and more things have happened and they will continue to happen. And what we will need is people like you to continue to make things happen, because that's what you've done for, excuse me, the last 10 months. I don't know if this is a Menti question. There's no dots. There's words. People are typing in what they're going to do. So the real question is, what are we going to continue to do, not only now in October, but for the foreseeable future, as we see a tremendous amount of change happening to things that we have grown used to being stable. And I'm going to let these words keep going because they're great. And if lots of you have done a lot of work through the last 10 months, you can see that this is an evolving list of ideas of new things to do next. And I hope you can see that you are not alone and that there are, many people who are all doing little things that have turned out to make a really big difference. So with that, I'm going to let these words continue to populate. And I hope that the rest of your day at this conference is inspiring and gives you even more ideas than what is being shared on the screen. Have a great rest of your day. Thank you. We know it's over now. Phil's coming to give me the hook.
Thank you, Tammy. You do a fantastic job all the time, and we should give her another round of applause here. Yeah. And if you notice on your table, you have one of these little buttons that says your advocacy makes a difference. And if you turn it around, you can see a really strong advocate in the mirror. And we just wanted to remind you that you do have the power to make changes. So you can please take one of the buttons with you. Yesterday, I said that we had another Die Hard award to give out at lunch. We are going to give it out right now instead. I know those are so much fun. So let me start this little PowerPoint. Cody, did you guys like this little interactive app? All right, here we go. See if you can guess who this diehard is.
This person I see 2 or 3 times a week because we are on some of the same advocacy calls. This person has kept people informed every week since January about what is happening and how people can take action. This person is always there if people have questions about what is going on in the political landscape. This person always uses the most colorful language and has such interesting metaphors. Sometimes you just have to write them down and then look them up later. This person has a kind heart and always goes the extra mile to make sure people know that someone's being aware of what's going on. This person has a way with words, with advocacy, so that everyone understands what's going on in plain language, even though sometimes when hearing the news or the political stuff, it's not always in plain language. And congratulations to this person because they are really deserving of this great award.
I first started working with BPDD when I joined Partners in Policymaking several years ago. At the time, I didn't know much about advocacy on a state or federal level. The person we're talking about today had a tremendous impact on my confidence as I learned more about the legislative process and how advocacy works and the real impact that self-advocates can have on policy change. Since graduating from Partners, I've become a board member with BPDD and been able to be involved in many other self-advocacy efforts. A lot of that is because of the confidence that BPDD and this person in particular has given me. I'm so grateful for the opportunity to get to know her, and I know she will continue to do great things for the disability community.
I first met this person back in January when I joined her very first Medicaid webinar. And since then, I have gotten to know her as someone who has helped parents like me figure out how to navigate the legislative process and really advocate for our kids. Week after week for almost 9 months now, she has taken really complex policies and broken them down in ways that I could actually understand. And she's done it all while staying, I think, remarkably professional and incredibly nonpartisan in everything that's going on. The guidance that we have gotten from this person is such a big reason why people with disabilities and their allies have been really leading the charge on Medicaid advocacy this year. But it's really more than that. A lot of us were talking about how to just try to hang on to what we had. And this person has really pushed us to think bigger. She has told us that we should be using this moment in time to fight for something better, for healthcare and for life care that really reflects what people with disabilities and their caregivers want and need. So over these past 9 months, I have heard this person say countless times that the disability community really has the best people, and she is absolutely right, and she belongs at the top of this list. So Congratulations on this award. I can't think of anyone who has earned it more.
I have known this year's award winner for more than a decade. I have followed her through the Capitol. I have participated in many a meeting with her, and am very excited that she is receiving the award this year. She has gone above and beyond in her role. We are incredibly indebted to her and her work. I have the pleasure of making legislative visits with this person. I find that she is not only knowledgeable and professional, but also reacts well under pressure. And there are times where we're in a visit and a legislator says something to us that we might think is pretty obscure, but we manage to hold it together till we get back out in the hall, and we try very hard not to make eye contact during the meetings because we know we want to be appropriate, and she always is. I feel like she has advanced our advocacy work in so many ways, and I just really want to say my congratulations to her for all that she has done. This person is persistent. I often say she's like a dog with a bone, which I think is pretty amusing given that she likes to show dogs in her free time.
And the award goes to
Tammy Jackson. Woo! Let's all stand up for Tammy. Tammy, come on up here. Like Lynn said, Tammy's one of the few public policy experts who doesn't just think of how things are, but how they should be. She is compassionate, persistent, and she's one of the best known advocates in the Capitol. Congratulations to Tammy. We all owe you so much.
I've spent 45 minutes talking to this morning, and my boss says I have to say more words now. So I asked her if this meant that I was supposed to retire, and she said no, that I have 20 years left at least. So I hope that means 20 years more with all of you as well. And we will train the next generation so that we finally can retire at some point, right? And pass the torch. Thank you.
first time Tammy is speechless, but thank you all for sticking out.
This was left at a booth.
Okay. Danielle Lass,
Lass.
Lass, if you've lost something, a credit card, debit card, come and find me. You've got some time to go visit the exhibitors. If you have your vouchers, you can use your vouchers up until noon, and we'll see you back here for lunch. Have a great morning.